Saudi Arabia an ally or are they an enemy? That's what the latest Florida Bulldog article writes today from Dan Christensen, in which he calls with the newest information that has come out in the last 24 months, a new congressional investigation involving the Saudi kingdom's financing and logistical support to some of the 9/11 hijackers while they were living inside the United States under the guidance and watch of the Central Intelligence Agency. So let's get right into it. As you can see, here it is. Saudi Arabia, our ally, or our perfidious ally, calls for a new 9/11 investigation to find out. Let's read. The 9/11 Commission, whose job was to provide the American public with a full and complete account of the circumstances surrounding the September 11 attacks, went out of business nearly 2 decades ago on August 21st, 2004, when the report was released. Since then, the public has learned much more about what happened. Basic dots have been connected to the point that our new knowledge has profound geopolitical implications for the United States. The essential question is Saudi Arabia our ally, or as former Senator Bob Graham has repeatedly said, our perfidious ally? Accompanying that new knowledge has come fresh calls for a new public investigation to build on what the 9/11 Commission began. Just like with the FBI. The FBI began their investigation into 9/11 terrorist attacks with Pent Bomb. What happens? Well, Pent Bomb ended, and a new investigation began by some of those FBI agents who knew there was more information that wasn't being released to the public, Operation Encore. So if there could be a new investigation into 9/11 from the FBI, why can't there be a new investigation from Congress? Right? Well, it says here, accompanying that new knowledge has come fresh calls for a new public investigation to build on 9/11 Commission began, and doubts and despair about the will of our leaders to get to the truth in the major news media to pay attention. True. And an acknowledgement from one former 9/11 Commission member that there is much more to discover. Of course. You know, one thing about the 9/11 Commission is that for you truthers out there to say the whole report is wrong, no, that's not true. The whole report isn't wrong because much information was not put in the report, making the report now false but incomplete. Now, ask yourself, why did these self-appointed experts of 9/11 truth basically tell you not to read something which you should have done right off the bat to see whether the dots are connecting? You can't just listen to people, not even me, right? What I want you to do, the viewer, is to take information from somebody and then you verify it whether it's true. Guess what? You just became an independent investigator instead of a follower, which is what certain 9/11 truth movement self-appointed experts want you to be. Because once you stop following and once you investigate and properly research, you are not going to be following those people anymore because they don't do research, right? They're not investigators. They're grifters. A lot of them are. Not all of them, but a lot of them. No different than the media, okay? Accompanying that new knowledge is, okay, there is no doubts in my mind that the complete account of individual and some Saudi Wahhabi organizations' involvement in 9/11 has not been adequately investigated. The 9/11 Commission tried very hard, but was unable to get full cooperation from some administration departments, said former Congressioner John Lehman, who served as Secretary of the Navy under President Ronald Reagan. Wahhabism is Saudi Arabia's dominant faith, a fundamentalist sect of Sunni Islam akin to puritanical Salafism. Kristen Breitweiser is a 9/11 widow. She lost her husband, Ron, who worked in the World Trade Center South Tower, and she was one of the 4 so-called Jersey Girls who were instrumental in getting a reluctant President Bush to establish 9/11 Commission. The last time the truth movement did anything positive, and they weren't even called truthers. They were just called the Jersey Widows. Of course, we need a new investigation because the first 2 official ones were cover-up stories rather than full and complete fact-finding accounts. The commission based its entire understanding of the 9/11 plot through unreliable evidence gathered through the enhanced interrogation of individuals like Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. And you know that the NSA never provided any records of files, particularly the transcripts related to its Al-Qaeda targets. Hey, guess who else has been trying to tell the public about releasing NSA transcripts? Paul Thompson, Kevin Fenton, Ray Nowlisky, John Duffy, myself. That's where, as CIA's chief of station Michael Scheuer put it, the gold mine of Al-Qaeda and bin Laden and 9/11, the gold mine of information, the NSA. It's the reason why the Joint House and the 9/11 Commission barely interviewed Director Michael Hayden. Now, I have uploaded the entire inquiries. Go watch them. You'll see that very few questions were directed to Hayden. Very few. Why? Question is why. And why the NSA? Because, like I said in previous videos, the NSA were listening to bin Laden's satellite phones from the mid-90s. That's how they found out about the Yemen hub. They then went and tapped the Yemen hub. Can you imagine what they were talking about in those phones? Were they talking about operations or were they not? We don't know because they didn't release the transcripts. Why? That is the essence of 9/11 right there. Not the damn towers or how they fell, right here. We're talking about years before 9/11. If they were talking about the plane's operation at the Malaysia summit meeting, if they were talking about it on these phones, that means that the NSA knew about specifics and didn't share that either with the CIA or the FBI or the State Department or anybody else. This is the reason why we need the transcripts released. Good on Kristen Breitweiser. She gets it. Why can't you? So, yes, I say it's about time for a follow-up investigation that answers the many questions that the 9/11 families have surrounding the cold-blooded murder of about 3,000 loved ones. And I'd be happy to work as a staff member of that investigation for free. John Lehman. Brett Eagleson's father, John, also died in the collapsed South Tower. We need to correct the mistakes in the 9/11 Commission, which never had the luxury of incorporating the findings of Operation Encore, Brett Eagleson said. That's right. Or the counter documents. The U.S. government, Saudi government, and the mainstream media default back to the findings of the 9/11 Commission. But what we've been saying for a long time now is that the 9/11 Commission has been nullified given what we know now. And we know so much now. Not everything, or not even close to everything, but we have enough now that we could command a new investigation. And maybe we can incorporate the DEA report, the Gerald Shea memorandum, into the new investigation. Whoa! Because that's what Gerald Shea, the retired lawyer who the memorandum was named after, sent to the Joint House and 9/11 Commission. He sent his inquiry, the report. They ignored it, just like they ignored Able Danger, just like they ignored the NSA's transcripts. So the report, not all the commission report is wrong. It's incomplete. Incomplete report. That's what it should be called. There should be absolutely be either congressional hearings, a Senate committee maybe, or a new 9/11 investigation to correct the shortcomings of the 9/11 Commission. I would say, and I'm not important, who am I? I would say a new investigation brought on by a public inquiry with some retired FBI officials that were trying to blow the whistle, like Mark Rossini or Ken Williams, right? And also prevent those, and anybody working in the Operation Encore case, and send those findings to a congressional inquiry, one that isn't persuaded by political ideology. That's important. It's going to be hard to do. I know that others feel the same way. I'd love to see the FBI agents that worked on court be called before a congressional body to testify. Brett Eagleson, I've interviewed him. He's a fantastic individual. Head of the group 9/11 Justice, made up of families of loved ones, first responders who went on the scene. Their calls for more information were met Sunday night by a bipartisan demand for 9/11 records issued by U.S. Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigation Chair Richard Blumenthal Ranking member Ron Johnson. The two senators asked Attorney General Merrick Garland, FBI Director Christopher Wray to turn over the complete unredacted records of Saudi Arabia's role in the attacks and requested a full explanation of any ongoing need for classification of any portions of these records. They noted that since an earlier request to see those 9/11 investigation materials in July, we have not received a single document or obtained an explanation for any of the hundreds of redactions that remain despite the government recent declassification review of Operation Encore records ordered by President Biden. Sharon Premioli is a survivor of the attack. She escaped the North Tower before it fell, but was seriously injured when she got caught in the blast that accompanied the collapse of the South Tower. Absolutely. We need a new 9/11 investigation, she said. We need a public airing of everything that's occurred since 9/11 Commission. It should be televised. I agree. That's a good idea. It would actually negate a lot of what the commission said and what they didn't say, right? Because they weren't allowed to investigate certain matters. Terry Strada, who lost her husband Tom in the North Tower, said, I'm not pushing for a new hearings. I am pushing for a lawsuit in federal court in New York against Saudi Arabia to remain intact because it's under attack right now. Oh, I think that's a good point. It's a good point. And that decision is going to be made up next month in October in the Southern District of New York. Let's see what they have to say. Strada is currently lobbying lawmakers in Congress to pass the bipartisan Ensuring Justice for Victims of Terrorism Act, intended to make technical corrections to the Justice Against Sponsors of Terrorism Act, which is JASTA, that will allow the 9/11 victims' lawsuit against Saudi Arabia to proceed. Patricia Kaza is another of the Jersey girls who lost her husband, John, who died in the North Tower. She moved from Colton Neck in central New Jersey to upstate New York because it got too painful to remain. Should there be a new 9/11 investigation? I would love for nothing more. I would love for it, for the nation, but for Congress and the president to have the will and fortitude to see it through and give the investigation the teeth that it should have had 22 years ago. Do I think there's going to be that will going forward? Not really, Kaza said. Kathleen Owens is the widow of Peter Owens, who died in the North Tower. It's not that it hasn't been investigated. It has been investigated, and they just hid the results of that investigation from us. That's right. So to say we want a new 9/11 investigation, what would make me think I'd trust a new investigation any more than what we've already got? Well, that's because the information provided in the Castro Operation Encore files wasn't provided in the 9/11 Commission. Now, of course, this was covered up because it was known to the commission and the FBI's previous administration under Robert Mueller. It was actually kept as a cover-up, hidden from public view, hidden from being investigated. But now it's public view. Now everybody knows, right? So there's nothing to hide. That's why I think a new investigation is warranted. There was stuff they said that needed further investigation, but look at the big picture. No one in our government has ever answered the question of who paid for 9/11. There's no official answer. How is that possible after 20 years? Is it that they don't know? The best investigative agencies in the world, the FBI, the CIA, don't know who paid for 9/11? They know. And why has the media, the mainstream media, let the government get away with not having answered that question for 20 years? Why aren't they still asking for the answer? Owen said, and let me put forward, they have some of the financial people involved, like Mustafa Al-Sawi, who sent Western Union checks to Mohammed Atta, Mohammed al-Shehi, and Ramzi bin al-Shib also sent some finances and logistical support as well. But that's not everybody. What about the $100,000 wire transfer from former Pakistani ISI General Mahmoud Ahmed, right? That money went to a terrorist who, with Pakistan ISI intelligence influence, and Omar Saeed Sheikh, who sent that money to Mohammed Atta. It's not speculation, it's true. Is that everything? Perhaps the most important development in 9/11 saga was the discovery of the existence of the FBI's Operation Encore. Began on October 26, 2007, and lasting nearly a decade, Encore was the follow-up to the FBI's original 9/11 investigation coordinated pen bomb. It focused on the Saudi role in 9/11. The FBI released the first public document about Encore to Florida Bulldog during the Freedom of Information litigation in 2016. This is why Florida Bulldog is a national treasure and should be protected at all costs. And the public deserves blame for allowing the greatest website in regards to history and the archive industry and 9/11 in historycommons.org, which was run by the greatest 9/11 researcher of all time, Paul Thompson, in my view. The greatest archive in the world, not even close, which is the reason why I'm doing my own WordPress, which pales in comparison. Now, I have close to 6,000 pages uploaded, but I mean, I think that had millions. So it was it's still obtainable through the Wayback Machine, but the only other archive of material is Florida Bulldog, and they deserve an award. Dan Christensen, he's a saint. The only consistent news, internet news, alt media, I would consider him, or underground media, like the late Daniel Hopsicker. But Dan Christensen is the only one who is giving us news updates regarding what's going on with 9/11. The only one. There's nobody else. Nobody. Nobody else. The initial document, a summary report as of October 2012, was heavily redacted for national security, privacy, and other reasons. You're covering for Saudi Arabia, and that's coming from the State Department, not from the FBI. The FBI is getting their orders from the State Department through a classification review from the National Security Council, right? But its declassification portions revealed that agents and prosecutors in New York had targeted an apparent U.S. support network for two of the 9/11 suicide hijackers in Nawaf al-Hazmi and Khalid al-Mihdhar, who, with three other terrorists, crashed American Airlines Flight 77 into the Pentagon. And for you certain fringe truthers that don't believe a plane crashed in the Pentagon, this is what you're eliminating, right? None of this Operation Encore, the Saudi financing of Khalid al-Mihdhar, Nawaf al-Hazmi, this all goes away, right? Because you don't believe in hijackers, hijack planes. This is your cover-up, and you're helping the state by doing it. It's funny. You claim to be truthers. You claim to be against truthers, purveyors against lies and misinformation. Why are you propagating misinformation? Why are you propagating lies? I'm talking to you, certain people in the truth movement, right? Don't believe in planes or hijackers. We have a full investigation which shows that the CIA and Saudi intelligence were monitoring these two men in Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, and they were doing it illegally because CIA is not allowed to run operations inside the United States, and with a foreign intelligence service, known that these two guys were involved at some level with the USS Cole bombing, and they were coming from a high-level Al-Qaeda meeting in Malaysia. It didn't tell the FBI or the principals' meetings at the State Department. We can hold people accountable. Who didn't provide the information? Well, Tom Wilshire for one, Richard Blees another, Michelle Ann Casey's another. These are analysts at the CIA's Alex Station. And where are they getting their orders from? Cofer Black, head of the Counterterrorism Center, and Director George Tenet. But you are too cowardly to take action. And you would rather believe that the planes were drones or holograms and Dov Zakheim, he's in a bunker with an Atari joystick manuing planes. Imagine the silliness and embarrassment you have to admit to yourself that you believe that. And that's rough. But the truth doesn't care about your feelings. The truth stands alone. And all those people who provide that silly instance of no planes on where are they now? Are they doing videos? Are they reporting news like I am? Or DJ Thumberdayner is? No. Or Sean Russell and Darren Harvey? No, they don't. We're the only ones providing new information. You remember that. And I don't want to pat on my back. I don't want that. I don't want to pat on my back. I don't want to be acknowledged. I want the information acknowledged. That's more important to me. And if you remember me more than information, I did something wrong. I want action. The only way to get it is through evidence, information, something tangible. The report listed three main subjects of the probe: Fahad al-Tamari, a Saudi diplomat and imam at the Los Angeles King Fahd Mosque; Saudi spy Omar al-Bayoumi; and another whose blanked out name later became public, Muwassid al-Jarrah, the big name. He's the Saudi ambassador's director of Islamic affairs and was in the document to have tasked Fahad al-Tamari and Omar al-Bayoumi with aiding Nawaf al-Hazmi and Khalid al-Mihdhar following their arrival in Los Angeles in January of 2000. But let me add something to that, because also in the Operation Encore files was Muwassid al-Jarrah providing 2 individuals he hired to also aid in the assistance of Nawaf al-Hazmi, Khalid al-Mihdhar, by acting as an overall the eyes of Muwahsid al-Jarrah. And that's Adel al-Sahan and Muatib al-Sudari. And what I'll do is I'll read you, and we're gonna look at this together, right? I'm gonna disappear for a second. And as you can see here, right? According to I-94 information, Adel al-Sadhan, believed to be identified with Adel al-Sadhan, entered Los Angeles on December 15, 1998. His intended address was the Hilton Hotel, Los Angeles, and he listed a contact telephone number as I-94 that was subscribed to Fahad al-Thamari, the imam at the King Fahd Mosque. Al-Sadhan returned to the United States on June 13, 1999. This is accompanied by an associate, Muatib al-Sudari. Both men entered Washington, D.C. That's where Muwahsid al-Jarrah is, the same flight. Now, what does it say here? Muwahsid al-Jarrah was then director of the Islamic Affairs Department at the Saudi Arabian Embassy in Washington, D.C. Al-Jarrah was stationed in Washington, D.C. from 1991 to 2005. Al-Jarrah's official responsibilities were to manage and control all assignments of Saudi imams in the United States and facilitate the issuance of their diplomatic visas. That's huge. Al-Jarrah may have been trying to bring other Sunnis, Salafi extremists, into the United States through his position at the embassy. Okay? That's all I need to show you. The connection of Muwahsid al-Jarrah and extremism between groups like Al-Qaeda and associates, and also Salafi imams preaching this doctrine, which is anti-Islamic, to mosques around the United States. Now you have a nexus, and one imam who has connections to the 2 men that were being surveilled by the CIA and the Saudi General Intelligence Director was Fahad al-Thamari. Well, Muwahsid al-Jarrah hired Fahad al-Thamari, hired him as the imam at the King Fahd Mosque. Let's keep going. The FBI files about Encore were otherwise off limits for years after Trump administration Attorney General William Barr and National Security Acting Director Richard Grenell swore under penalty of perjury that they contained state secrets whose public release was likely to cause significant harm to national security, significant harm to Saudi Arabia, because it would uncover the CIA operation. They're covering for the CIA and Saudi intelligence here. But the government's stance changed dramatically on September 3rd, 2021, when President Joe Biden ordered the FBI and other agencies to review and declassify their 9/11 investigation records, starting with Operation Encore. That's Executive Order 14010, I believe. And basically, one of the few good things about the Biden administration was this. But Biden, let me tell you why I think he did this. This is not fact, but earlier in that year, he was rebuffed by the Saudi hierarchy under Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman about producing more oil barrels to the United States at a discount price. And bin Salman said no. Later on, this came out. In other words, fuck with us and we'll show you. Not knowing that Biden, who's probably having dementia, doesn't realize that the United States is also involved with the monitoring of 2 Al-Qaeda operatives that were later involved with 9/11 hijackers. And the CIA probably told him, hey, relax there, Chief. The American people deserve to have a fuller picture of what their government knows about those attacks, said Biden's executive order. It is therefore critical to ensure that the U.S. government maximizes transparency, relying on classification only when narrowly tailored and necessary. Thus, information collected and generated in the United States government's investigation of the 9/11 terrorist attack should now be disclosed, except when the strongest possible reasons counsel otherwise. So they're covering. I mean, it's right here. They're covering for Saudi Arabia. And this is not new because the 9/11 Commission actually brought this up. Listen.
Mr. Wolosky, I was focused on your final paragraph. We don't hold the Saudis' feet to the fire. Now, I gather from your testimony that we, the United States, and the countries that are most responsible here, if we had the political will to crack down on financing, we could do it. But because of policy considerations that are very important, we don't do it. We have to have the oil. We have to have the overflight rights. We have to have the basing rights. And because we have to have those things, we do not hold their feet to the fire. Is that your view?
That is my view. Fortunately, I wasn't called before you to testify on policy with regard to Saudi Arabia in the current context of.
No, I appreciate that. I'm not being critical of you in any way. It's just a very good illustration of how policy gets in the way of, in this case, enforcement.
Yes, that's the point of my testimony.
Yeah.
In other words, I'm not here to make judgments over whether or not particular issues should be prioritized over other issues.
I understand.
But what I can tell you is that the United States at the highest levels has not spoken out loudly and forcefully on the terrorist financing issue as it relates to Saudi Arabia. Now, that's not to say that things aren't being done. I have every reason to believe that a lot is being done, but it's being done in the shadows. And the conclusion of the Council on Foreign Relations report was that it was time to bring it out of the shadows, for the President of the United States or for other senior officials to state clearly, unequivocally, and unambiguously what was required of the Saudi government on the terrorist financing issue. That is not being done. And in the judgment of this task force, it needed to be done in order to set benchmarks for the Saudis and to communicate, to enable the Saudi government to communicate to its own citizens what type of conduct was and was not acceptable.
All right. So obviously there's a problem here because there's a lot of interest at stake. As you heard from Lee Wolosky and co-chair of the 9/11 Commission, Lee Hamilton, that those interests are actually getting in the way of the investigation. Let's go back to the article. Over the recent months, the FBI released more than 500 documents totaling over 4,000 pages that were once state secrets. By the way, I'm almost done reading all the Operation Encore files, yet are not known to have caused significant harm to national security. So, by the way, William Barr, where are you getting your orders from? From the president. Has to be, right? And who's the president getting their orders from? Well, yeah, that's the question. Department of Justice has apparently chosen not to investigate Barr or Grenell for perjury. Those FBI documents were little noticed nor reported on by the nation's two biggest table setters for the news coverage, New York Times and the Washington Post. Nevertheless, they contain numerous significant, even explosive disclosures. I made a couple of videos on this, showing you those disclosures, because nobody else is doing it. Saudi Arabia is vigorously defending in federal court in New York a long-running civil suit brought on by 9/11 survivors, family members, and other victims who have been accused of the kingdom of complicity in the al-Qaeda terrorist attacks. On September 8, 2021, following Biden's executive order, but before any documents have been declassified and made public, the Saudi embassy in Washington put out a statement. Quote, the embassy of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to the United States welcomes the release of classified documents relating to terrorist attacks against the United States on September 11, 2001. It said, previous declassification of materials relating to the September 11 attacks only have confirmed the 9/11 Commission's finding that Saudi Arabia had nothing to do with this terrible crime. It is lamentable that such false and malicious claims persist, end quote. Well, then, if that's true, why didn't Saudi intelligence operatives like Omar al-Bayoumi or Osama Basnan or Fahad al-Thumeri tell the truth to the 9/11 Commission when they were interviewed? They didn't. They lied. In fact, it is stated in the 9/11 Commission report, which you choose to say is all wrong, that they were lying. Under Fahad al-Thumeri, they went to Saudi Arabia and interviewed him in front of full view of GID officials where Fahad al-Tamari, in the report, the memorandum for the record of Fahad al-Tamari, says at the end, we found Fahad al-Tamari's interview deceptive, that he never saw Khalid al-Mihdhar and Wafa Hazmi, when we know he did. For decades, Saudi Arabia has cited the 9/11 Commission statements to bolster its contention that it had nothing to do with the terrorist attacks in New York and Washington. That's because you didn't see the Operation Encore Canistrail documents. That's why. And now with this new information, that's why we're calling for a new investigation. The Commission's final report concluded that it found no evidence that the Saudi government as an institution or senior Saudi officials individually funded al-Qaeda. However, when the FBI went to investigate Omar al-Bayoumi, they found out his employer, the Saudi Arabian Air Presidency, the man who hired him, whose name escapes me right now, his son had a CD-ROM of passports of himself and 9/11 hijackers, Omar Abdul Rahman, Marwan al-Shehi, Khalid al-Mihdhar, and somebody else. There's a couple on there. I would say that's a freaking connection. For the kingdom, the single most devastating FBI document to emerge is a 130-page report dated July 23rd, 2021, that lays out numerous connections to U.S.-based personnel and entities controlled by the Saudi Arabian government to the September 11 attacks. It marks the first time since the disclosure of Operation Encore that classified records previously declared to be state secrets explicitly state that Saudi government officials knowingly provided a support network for the first two al-Qaeda hijackers to enter the United States. Boom, I would say. The report also lays out what it calls the FBI's investigations and supporting documentation regarding the religious militant network that was created, funded, directed, and supported by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and its affiliated organizations and diplomatic personnel within the United States. That network, as described in the report, was intertwined with the hijackers. Don't believe me? Let's take a look at this video. As you can see, this is Tim Romer of 9/11 Commission report. Did Saudi Arabia pay hundreds of millions to al-Qaeda?
Let me continue to pursue that line of questioning in a minute. Let me go to Dr. Fondi for a question as well. Dr. Fondi, a former CIA agent by the name of Robert Baer writes in the May Atlantic Monthly issue that particularly he's concerned about Saudi Arabia's support for fundamentalism and for terrorism abroad. He states in this article many things, but one of them, he claims that the Saudis have transferred $500 million to al-Qaeda over the past decade. Now, do you think that there is any kind of credibility to a figure like that? How would you be able to track that, and how would you measure the Saudi support with the United States for fighting terrorism prior to 9/11?
To just be absolutely honest, I just don't know this figure. I did not come across this figure. And also the idea of wire transfer or transfer of funds, I can probably say throughout the Arab world, people use cash and not banking systems. So it's very difficult to actually trace it unless the origin of the money came from a Western country. Unless there is something that's really, the idea that I haven't seen from my study of Saudi Arabia that people use checks or even when they use bank deposit, this is not a really large group of the society. Most people get their salaries in cash. So the idea of wire transfers with that amount of money has to originate somewhere else. It could have connection to Saudi Arabia.
I think he insinuates, as Dr. Gudaratna did, with respect to Mohammed Jamal Khalifa, that some of the money was funneled through charities and other things.
That's right. I think that's the very central question for really looking at Saudi Arabia, is to look at these charities. And I talked to Saudis about this in interviews in terms of what do they think of that. And I think sometimes they come off as these are the unintended consequences of bad politics, that somehow they decided to upgrade Saudi Arabia's image in the Muslim world, therefore they tried to help the poor with schools, with other places, not knowing that the ideology as well as the manning of these organizations was hijacked by Al-Qaeda members. So there is,
Okay.
I have.
So, yeah, I mean, basically, that's what has been going on. And this is not new. I mean, authors like Lawrence Wright and Peter Bergen and other experts have basically stated to documentary information that Saudi Arabia was paying blackmail money to Al-Qaeda for them not to attack. Remember that it was bin Laden who went before the Saudi kingdom when Iraq invaded Kuwait and insinuated that he could provide the Arab Mujahideen to act as a army against the Ba'athist army, and it was rejected. And because they invited the United States to station at Mecca, Medina, the holiest sites in all of Islam, bin Laden declared war on the United States, only on their military time, and the kingdom itself. So what the kingdom did was to charities, and he spent hundreds of millions to Al-Qaeda and their affiliates like Abu Sayyaf in the Philippines and Jemaah Islamiyah in Indonesia, not to attack them. That's what happened. Remember that bin Laden used to make declarations in the 90s stating that the kingdom was heretical. Why didn't he attack the kingdom? He's right there. I mean, he's close. He never did. Same thing for the Palestinian problem in Israel. All these Wahhabi clerics, they hate Israel, but they never attacked them. Never. Now, you can make this statement that it's harder to attack a smaller country, more fortified, than the United States. That could be true. But they never even tried. Let's go back to the article at hand, right? Saudi government officials and intelligence officers were directly operating and supporting the entities involved with this network. Their involvement with the activities of the organizations, individuals would logically be supposed to have the knowledge or countries of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabian government. This government and or concurrence by the Saudi Arabian government is related to the 9/11 investigation, not only by their direct involvement of some personnel, but also via the creation of a larger network of such activities, the report says. The FBI refers repeatedly in the report to the existence of a U.S.-based Saudi support network from the 9/11 hijackers. Previously, the FBI had not acknowledged that such networks were found because they were told not to. The report goes on to provide an updated analysis about the ties of some of these entities to Saudi Arabian intelligence services, noting that much information has come to light since the 9/11 Commission report in 2004. Much of the report zeroes on the apparently nefarious role of a pair of religious officers operating within the D.C. Embassy of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the Islamic Affairs Department of the Office of Dawah or Propagation, and that is Muassad al-Jarrah. Investigation of 9/11 hijackers and their support networks identified significant connections to these offices, either directly or via the Saudi Arabian consulate in Los Angeles. The report also names Prince Bandar Bush, he was nicknamed, then Saudi Arabia's ambassador to the U.S. and close friend of both Presidents Bush and the Saudi embassy, as being involved with the funding of a multitude of Islamic organizations, imams, and other religious figures within the United States, many of which were involved with militant ideology. The 2021 FBI report affirmatively identifies diplomat Muassad al-Jarrah for the first time as also working as a spy for Saudi Arabia's primary intelligence agency, the General Intelligence Presidency, the GIP or the GID Directorate. A heavily redacted section of the report states that as early as 2001, the embassy's Islamic Affairs section was one of the largest spy operations in the world with approximately 50 officers. Wow, right? They're not the only ones, because on the other hand, we have the Israelis through the Gerald Shea memorandum. Put these two together, what a nexus, right? The 2021 FBI report also lists detailed information about numerous of the Saudi individuals, educational institutions, and charities, most notably the Muslim World League. That's where the money is coming from, because Saudi government officials go to the Muslim World League and other organizations, and they pay through these charities and imams, like in Virginia or San Diego or Los Angeles, right? Or Maryland. That's where the hijackers were. Just so happens that's who they were meeting. When Khalid al-Mihdhar and Wahhabi were in Los Angeles, they went to see Fahad al-Tamari. When they went to San Diego, they went to see Anwar al-Awlaki. When they went to Virginia, they went to see Anwar al-Awlaki. The primary non-government organization in Saudi Arabia was MWL, which operated the International Islamic Relief Organization, Sanabel, the Sanabel Akhir Seeds of Charity, the Al-Amin and World Assembly of Muslim Youth. The report says they were collectively operating out of offices in Herndon, Virginia, where Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi went. The 2021 report about those other offices associated with the Saudi embassy documents the extensive ties to the Saudi Arabian government, as well as extensive ties to terrorism, specifically Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda members were employed within these organizations and utilized funding for terrorism support and used the offices for cover for movement of personnel. Other declassified FBI documents or documents that have been now released in less censored versions have put much more new evidence on the 9/11 record. A less redacted version of the October 2012 FBI summary report revealed the names of persons authorities were seeking to indict in New York for providing material support to the hijackers. Modar Abdullah, who now lives in Sweden, worked with Nawaf al-Hazmi at a Southern California gas station, accompanied Nawaf al-Hazmi, Khalid al-Mihdhar to Los Angeles International Airport in June of 2000 before Khalid al-Mihdhar's return trip to Yemen to visit family. Abdullah was also a family friend and associate of Anwar al-Awlaki, a local religious leader who also knew the two hijackers. Al-Awlaki was killed by U.S. drone in Yemen in 2011 by President Barack Obama. The first U.S. citizen to be targeted and killed that way, by the way, Obama. Yeah, progressive, hope and change. A September 2009 report says the FBI obtained surveillance footage from a security camera at LAX showing Nawaf al-Hazmi, Khalid al-Mihdhar, and Modar Abdullah, and a fourth unknown person who appears to be holding a camera and may have been conducting reconnaissance of LAX security measures. FBI higher-ups declined agents' pleas to go public with the footage in hopes of identifying the person with the camera. Why not? Why not? The report also revealed that agents also asked permission to interview two Saudi princes they believe could help to identify the man with the camera. Nawaf bin Saud bin Mohammed bin Al Saudi and his brother Matib bin Saud bin Mohammed bin Al Saud. The report does not say why agents believe the two princes might know the man. There is no indication in the reports that permission was granted to interview them. Continued monitoring support of Saudi government. Omar al-Bayoumi has long been described as a suspected Saudi spy, but two declassified FBI reports, one dated June 14, 2017, and the 2021 FBI report say flatly that from the late 1990s to 9/11, Bayoumi was a co-optee of the Saudi General Intelligence Presidency, paid a monthly stipend via the ambassador, Prince Bandar bin Sultan Al Saudi. Oh, wait a minute. You want evidence? Well, I have it, because Omar al-Bayoumi was indeed paid through a monthly stipend from his employer. And he had other companies like Dala Avco, which he was a ghost employee, as was stated. But Omar al-Bayoumi was indeed co-opted by another government presidency, and I will share that information with you to Operation Encore file, in which I'm going to share right here with you now, and we'll read together. I'll disappear for a second. Okay, now what does it say here? Omar al-Bayoumi, Saudi Arabian citizen, was employed by the PCA from 1977 through 1995 in various administration positions, including the aviation fees checker, budget clerk, accounts checkers, section read, and accountant. Al-Bayoumi obtained a bachelor's degree from Saudi-based King Abdulaziz University while working for the PCA. Discussed with Carly the possibility to study abroad in order to achieve career advancement with the PCA. As you could see, he worked at the presidential air presidency, okay? And also, when he was investigated by Scotland Yard, they found nefarious items that he provided material support to Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi while working at Saudi Arabian Air Presidency, while he was getting paid a monthly stipend. As you can see, all these documents here show through Operation Encore files that Omar al-Bayoumi indeed was paid a monthly stipend. Here you go. On November 19, 2001, Special Agent blank interviewed blank, born in blank. The BC provides extensive education and employment background on, was employed at, by the way, his name is redacted, was employed at PCA, Dalafco, and stated that Omar al-Bayoumi was indeed a representative that PCA personnel wish to keep in America. Wish to keep in America was requested to provide a stipend to al-Bayoumi in the amount of $3,500 per month. According to blank, al-Bayoumi was already drawing a salary from PCA Dalafco as a ghost employee. To you truthers that don't read, look what you're missing out, right? Look at what you're missing out. Let's go back to the article. Information al-Bayoumi obtained on persons of interest in the Saudi community in Los Angeles, San Diego, and other issues which met certain GIP intelligence requirements would be forwarded to Bandar bin Sultan, the U.S. Saudi ambassador to the Bush administration. Bandar would then inform the GIP of return of items of interest to the GIP for further investigation, vetting, or follow-up. Now let's go further, right? Other information of significance have been released by other agencies. Last November, for example, the 31-page summary of the 9/11 Commission's private interview with President Bush and Vice President Dick Cheney. I made a video about that. The summary revealed that neither Bush nor Cheney was placed under oath during a 3-hour meeting in the Oval Office with the 9/11 Commission. It also described a generally relaxed, non-adversarial, and largely superficial get-together during which no significant information was gleaned. And Bush declared his non-public opinion that he didn't see much point in assigning personal blame for 9/11. Imagine a sitting president stating that there's not much interest in assigning blame for 9/11. You tell that to the loved ones like Brett Eagleson and Elizabeth Miller and Kristen Breitweiser, right? Tell them we don't need to assign blame. The summary, classified as sensitive, was released to Washington, D.C. area researcher Eric Lawson by the way, Eric Lawson is a national treasure. You can find millions of his documents on scrib.com, an obscure body comprised by various government entities like the Freedom of Information process, which can be used by the public to obtain a review of national security classified records. Then there is Florida Bulldog disclosures in 2011 of a secret FBI 9/11 investigation that found direct ties between Mohammed Atta and other 9/11 hijackers and Saudis living in the Sarasota area, which the Florida Bulldog reported intimately and repeatedly for the last 15 years, working with Irish author Anthony Summers. The Bulldog spoke with law enforcement and other sources who said how 2 weeks before the 9/11 attacks, that the Saudi family had abruptly left the Sarasota area home, leaving a new car in the driveway, a refrigerator full of food and other stuff. In the weeks that followed, law enforcement agents not only discovered the home was visited by vehicles used by the hijackers, but phone calls were linked between the home and the hijackers, including Mohammed Atta and fellow al-Qaeda member Marwan al-Shehi, who flew Flight 175 into the South Tower, and they were learning to fly a small airplane to the Huffman Aviation, a flight school at Venice Municipal Airport, 10 miles south of the home. The FBI kept its probe secret from Congress. Why did they do that? Which was then conducting a bipartisan 9/11 investigation, according to Senator Bob Graham, who co-opted the joint inquiry. Nor is it mentioned in the final report of the 9/11 Commission. Now, I say to you that with the Canestraro document, with the Operation Encore files released, the unredacted portions anyway, we can, with these two, the biggest revelations in all of 9/11, along with the Gerald Shea Memorandum, let's not forget that, we could show two foreign governments, intelligence services, including members of the military were involved with Israel, that there were foreign intelligence services monitoring not just the FBI, the DEA through the Israelis, but also to the 9/11 operatives. Now, was Israel acting in accordance with Saudi Arabia and the CIA? I don't think so. I think they were operating independently, but I think maybe the CIA knew about them. I just hope that they would share information with them, but they didn't. Obviously, 9/11 could have been prevented. But these are the questions we should be asking, not if a fucking third building fell. Who gives a shit about that? We'll get to that later. Right now, this is it. Right here, this information, which has names to go along with it. If we don't do it now, we ain't going to do it later. So we need more voices on this. For you out there who don't have a YouTube channel or an article or a Twitter account or a Facebook account, share this information. How about you? You share information, because we need more public interest in this. This is a huge operation, huge, monumental. You want to blame Israel? You want to blame the CIA? You want to blame the Saudis? Well, you got it all right here. Stop with the no planes, no hijackers, Judy with space. Stop it. Here's your cover-up right here. Okay. See you guys in the next video. As always, I will report without prejudice and without bias. And if there's any new updates, you'll be the first to know. See you in the next video. Take care, everybody.